I am with Lim Yi Jie in Singapore.
Yoo-hoo.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Lim Yi Jie. I am 19 years old this year. I've written poetry for at least 5 years, 2 years in Singapore Remo, and well, I don't have any awards or prizes, so well, you'll see me soon. Hopefully in the future.
Maybe no award, but what are you most proud of with your literary poetry journey?
Perhaps my cathartic poems, my inner child, how I write twin cinemas, because that's crazy. Yeah.
And I am Tan Lu Xian. I am originally from Singapore, but right now I live in Maine, USA. And I am so excited to be here with Yi Jie as a representative of Q's Blue World. So you're going to see more of our community features. So I'm very curious for the camera. What are you eating?
I'm eating Liam's specialty noodle. It's basically like, I think it's something like bak chor, but commercialized.
Mee pok ta.
Yeah.
Good or not?
It's okay. I have had better near home. So,
Spoken like a true foodie, a very loyal foodie. Cannot be any worse than the one I had a couple of days ago. It's almost like I was worried I had COVID again. It's like the texture is there. I could taste the fish balls, and the fish balls were good, but the most flavorful part got nothing. No cake. Yeah, so sad. So, I understand you've been taking a very courageous dive towards exploring your inner child. What motivated that, first of all?
well, I was watching Cam's Q&A on a Thursday, well, on my Thursday, because I think it was on Friday on your side, was it? Was it on Wednesday?
I don't know. All I remember was it was our accidental IG live. We were experimenting with how to turn on the IG live when we and then suddenly Yi Jie jumped out and said, wow, shy to turn off now. I think we should carry on. So we did. Then that I think was the episode where you made a very bold declaration.
I believe it was when Cam said something about, I don't know, my memory's all fuzzy already, but she said something about exploring the inner child, and then she talked about you and her having some fun, nurturing the inner child to have some fun. And I was thinking like, I just had that epiphany at that spot, at that food court after like hiking Bukit Timah Hill. I was like, wow, it spoke to me strongly, and decided to make one inner child poem, which was just a twin cinema, and I don't know, I just felt convinced to make more. So then I made more. I made like a gazelle, more twin cinemas. One of the twin cinemas was about Sadako Sasaki, the girl who witnessed Hiroshima and Nagasaki and tried to hold 10,000 paper cranes. Yeah, before she passed away to leukemia due to the radiation. And well, I was only inspired by the story because my school brought it up for their own message to celebrate our school's investiture. Well, I'm not very patriotic for my school. I just felt that the story was it spoke to me.
But correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that one of the poems that you featured at BTL with the crane picture?
Yeah, that's the one.
That was fantastic. It was a very good homage. So those are the outcomes of the process. Could you give us a glimpse of what does it mean for you to go and explore your inner child? What does the process look like?
Well, I would say my thought process is very unconventional, unlike a normal poet. Because, to be honest, at home I don't really have the poeting materials, so I just think about the past, what I wanted to do as a child, what I did as a child, what affected me as a child, what traumatized me as a child, and I just use that as a form of catharsis. And I think as I continue to write poetry, I think this, if you are including the time where I started poetry, this would be around my 5th or 4th year. But if you were to count only simple remote, because I believe that's where I started to begin blossoming as a poet. So it will be at least less than 2 years.
Nice.
And I come to realize that it comes to the point where to be a like a poet, you need to be true to yourself, and it's it's like an artist. If you're not true to the work you produce, then you're just a hypocrite, which is what one of my friend who's a rapper told me about it. And so I decided to just do it as cathartic feeling. And I told my rapper friend about it. He told me to get therapy, but it produced good. It produced good.
Ayo, what kind of support is that from a friend?
Nah, he was right. He was right. I was just talking about some other stuff, and yeah, I think therapy is good.
What risks have you faced and have had to deal with going to that place?
My inner child. Well, there was one poem where I went for. Okay, so I went for this enrichment program. I better not say his name because I'm pretty sure I will get sued. But I think because we in Singapore we have that need to become better, to be like score A's and all that. So I went for this enrichment program where it was I initially when I was around 10 years old, I thought the program would help me become like smarter and all that. But the methods, now that I look back at the methods, I look back at the article of the founder, article depicting the founders, having an interview with the founder at the very least. His methods were very bad, and it dealt a lot of emotional blackmail to us children. I think as soon as I said emotional blackmail, people will start knowing who the person is. So
this is where the suing begins.
Yep. That's fun. It's fine.
Okay, if you're watching now, please,
Yeah, and I decided to use a lot of the inner child poems I had dealt with childhood trauma as well, and the kind of world that I had to grow up and live in. Like we as children, like as around P1, P5, we start seeking to become better. We start prioritizing our grades over health, over our relationships, over what a kid should do. And to be honest, I grew kind of jealous of the white nuclear family sometimes.
It's a fantasy.
I know. And it kind of sucked. Like, man, I could have had fun as a kid, but I had to go for all these enrichment programs. My parents spent a fortune to, have me on this, and nothing came out. And
it's kind of depressing.
It's depressing, and I would say a lot of parents out there are still, prioritizing grades over a happy childhood for a kid, which sucks. So, yeah.
So from your perspective, if you did get more of that happy childhood experience, what do you think you would have experienced that you missed that is valuable?
I would have experienced sleeping over at my friend's house. I would have experienced having a Nerf gun earlier. My parents back then my parents were overly like, I just realized this is on public. I hope my mom doesn't see this. My parents were very strict back then. It's better now. But I wasn't allowed to own video games. I wasn't allowed to have a Nerf gun till I was 15.
Mom, if you're watching, ETA really loves you, okay? Don't panic.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things I couldn't own that were like, let's say, a Kamen Rider toy. It was probably more expensive than the implications an Asian parent would have, but my parents always, my mom especially, would say that these toys, these weapons were satanic because I think she was overly like, that Christian, the stereotypical Christian mom. Oh, she's better now, so it's not that bad. And it's funny because her friend in church, her kids, who are also my friends, they had the Kamen Rider toys, and I was like, I was just a bit jealous, just a bit. So
I've had that battle as well, but for us it was metal music, rock music, the backmasking rubbish. That's what we had to go through back in the day. But yeah, we understand where that is coming from. Okay. Was this a difficult process to delve into?
It was difficult to publish it, but when it came to writing, I was okay with the process. Because if I were to publish it, a lot of things start to come into consideration, like what if people think I'm trauma dumping? What if people think I'm trying to make up a story? Because last year I wasn't that expressive.
Are you sure? No, is that the drama, right?
And also I was thinking like, I don't know, I just had that fear if I were to publish this, I would have some sort of backlash, but I just didn't know what. But regardless, I just published anyway, so because it's just one button.
I think that's the part that requires the most courage to come out with it, because it's one thing to have a diary, a journal with all these cathartic pieces, but to come out, then you really face the potential of feedback in all its forms, positive and negative, and it can be very traumatizing in itself to deal with the feedback. So I salute you. I went through a similar process because of you. I think I highlighted it as well, where I said, wow, Lim Yi Jie is going to go there. It's now or never, because I kept glancing at it as well. And I had a similar cathartic effect. It was very therapeutic to write it, but even down to the last moment to hit okay, we're gonna read this one. Even Cam could see the stress in my eyes. Because once it's out there, you cannot reframe it. It's there for all to respond to, right? So yeah, that I applaud you. It's that moment of we're gonna send it.
Well, I mean, I was half asleep when I published it, so.
Ayo.
And to add on to the bravery of publishing these poems, I think, I'm not sure, but I was thinking how childhood spanned across. I thought childhood would span at least until 13 to 14, but now maybe I realize maybe it's until 16. Like, so for these past 3 years when the pandemic hit, a lot of my relationships grew cold, and people I thought who were my closest friends, we just separated.
That's sad.
Yeah, and
disappointing.
you could say that it's because I was immature when I was 16. I hated myself in a not self-deprecating way, but in a way that's like, why did you do that? And I think a lot of that regret I harbored and guilt over these past 3 years was that I kept longing for my friends to, go out again, maybe talk about the old times. But coming to this year, I realized that I really got to stop looking back and realize that maybe those relationships were just only within those seasons of life. And it sucks, it hurts. I cried about it, but I moved on. I have a new place of my own, and now that I'm 3 years older from then, I have more people I can reach out to. I have more people that I see face to face, so I cherish them more. And so here's the interesting part about the Inner Child series. I split it into two. So from Inner Child 1 to 19, it will be depicting about the past self and probably a bit of coexistence between me and my inner child. But as soon as it hits the part 20, I changed the title to from Inner Child to Till the End, My Child. So it's a change from the past to more of looking towards the future, but also still having that aspect of inner child. It's like an evolution,
From
sequel.
reflection to projection.
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it.
Very cool.
And it's more hopeful because it's more ideal and possibly more naive because
No lah.
yeah, it's in a more positive tone, I feel, and I think it's just having that hope for the future and seeing if I can achieve the dreams that the inner child could have. Ultimately, I wish I can publish Inner Child, but
It's one of those things when Camlin and I talked about it. It's so personal, lah. Some of these things you don't share with many people because it's so personal and it's so intimate. You have to earn the respect and the trust for you to feel safe. If you don't feel safe, you shouldn't publish it or share it with a particular person. But as you already pointed out, the benefit of producing it and documenting it, the cathartic effect is very real. Because now it's like birthing it and looking at it from a different perspective, right? But your idea of naive, I think naive comes when you are not willing to hold your perspective against data and observation. And you don't strike me as somebody who's naive, because if someone offers you information, you'll be like, you might not like it, but I don't see you gripping a perspective all that hard from the short time I've known you. So I'm not worried about you struggling with being naive. But from the positive aspect of projecting what could be by designing your life, that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think till the end, my child, part 22, I was writing about how I wish to build a cafe. And this cafe is like, it's a simple idea, but I just want a cafe that's both a bookstore and maybe a community space to hold multiple events. And to be honest, in Singapore, with the increasing rent and cafes aren't really that popular for the common folks, it's probably a dream that might never come true. It's difficult, but obviously it still has its possibilities. And I just envision this cafe to be something like a safe space, something that people can have fun at, and just enjoy the vibes and all that. So that was
I would say two things that pop into my mind about your doing this for your inner child. I've never really heard of anybody caring for your inner child like it's your own offspring. But I think it's an opportunity lost to bring healing and resolution to a very real childhood. I don't think there's perfect childhood, obviously. There are better, less traumatic ones.
Yeah.
But then very traumatic ones that can be healed. And I suspect as you do the projection portion, you will recover some of your disappointments or I wish I had a karma toy thing. Maybe you go and buy a set now and as a young adult, And I think there's something very soothing and centering about that you had a more complete experience. Maybe not during your childhood, but as soon as you could, you listen to your inner child and you honor it by buying your Nerf guns, buying your karma toys, doing all the things that for whatever reason you did not experience during your childhood. Because it will lay to rest that gnawing feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it will ignite the now that I scratched the itch, maybe I can offer that for someone else through the cafe. But taking way to the cafe, it doesn't have to be a physical location, which is very expensive, obviously. What you're describing is gathering a community. And with all the social media apps today, you can gather a community and congregate surreptitiously in the food court. And then circulate table to table. Because after a certain size, you have to report the gathering. But no lah, we're just coming to makan, right? The poet club or the inner child club has convened. Whatever you call the wretched cafe, right? It is a virtual cafe, but you're roaming your physical space. So if you look at it from a gathering of community with similar aspirations, you can do it without renting a physical space or buying a physical space because how big to buy, right? If you start small, you'll outgrow. If you get too big, you sink. Versus if it's scalable, this week I need a space of 30, next week 300. Okay, whatever, right? So keep that in mind. You are the social media generation. Scale it. The more important thing is, can you rally people? Oh wow, yeah, Yi Jie, that's fantastic. Anytime, let's go. When you hear that, rally them. Because my sadness for Singapore is I feel like we are a very repressed society, frustrated. And anytime you give an honest platform to share hope, to share a genuine perspective of this is what I'm excited about. Not this toxic positivity nonsense. We're not talking about that. And we're not gathering to complain. There's plenty of that already. But it's a gathering to say, this is what I'm genuinely excited about. We could definitely use it. So don't forget, Facebook was simplistically designed to gather people after graduation. You can make WhatsApp groups or whatever groups to say, I'm going to Bukit Batok food court, 4th level. Who wants to join it? Ping, pong, 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 pong. Wow, 40 people. You better go to the corner over there so nobody gets grumpy, right? Or wow, very busy right now. Maybe we should go outside for a while and hang out before the crowd subsides. So don't wait until you can afford your physical space. Test the waters, sound out. Hey, who else feels this? If the hands go up, you got something going. And gather them lah.
Still, I think it would be cool if I could brew my own coffee.
In some ways, it's the neighborhood pub concept. You have a meeting space where people gather, you drink coffee, you have community. It's very convivial. Yeah, that's a good kopitiam. Again, anything that socializes us in Singapore with real experiences. But a lot of it is you, the operator, if you become the instigator of the matchmaker of, hey, Lucian, you really need to talk to Yi Jie, huh? You guys have been talking about inner child, but you haven't met yet, huh? Same journey, And it's like, wow, I found a friend, right? That could make the difference. Yeah. I think there's huge potential there because as busy as you guys are, as staff for real intimate interaction, not to be confused with any sexual, but close, vulnerable, wow, this is real life crap conversation. I mean, how often have you guys experienced that in the last 10 years, right? But it's very important. I think that's what builds a community. Otherwise, very superficial. Yeah, don't underestimate that. That is powerful.
Since I started looking into poetry as a hobby, I always wanted to meet like poets, especially sing-lit poets, and I sort of become like that fanatic, like a fanboy wanting to collect autographs from people. So, although you're not based in Singapore, I would like to ask you about considering you have more experience, how do you write poetry? Like, how do you make it concise? What is your thought process, and anything else?
Okay, I have a confession. I don't consider myself a poet because I don't aspire to be published. I write because it captures a moment, it captures something I want to remember later, like taking a photograph. I don't have very much ambition for the work, other than, wow, that's cool, click, literally. It's so, from that perspective, I'm not creating work for an anthology. I'm not strategically placing myself in the page poet world. I write poetry because I like hanging out with my sister. I write poetry because it's cathartic. I write poetry because I get to hang out with BTL and not just love and go, ha ha hi. I'm participating, not spectating, right? But from the process, again, confession, there are days where I go to sleep with a lot of stuff rummaging in my head, and then I wake up burning to write, and it just comes blah 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 blah. And then when I feel it's cathartic enough, okay, close, go back to sleep.
Same. Is that a thing for all poets? I don't know.
I don't think so. I've seen the buggers with the post-it notes, and they build like that. I look at that, I get stressed. I don't. It's almost like exam stress. You know, it's like, how do you write like that? No, for me, it's almost an intuitive, free-form stream of consciousness effort. And a lot of my creative works, I call it building phrases. It percolates in my mind. I see something and a phrase pops into my mind, or a movement comes into my mind, or a picture comes into my mind, and I remember it. So, wow, that's very cool. And then I might jot a note. And then when I got on the computer, I throw out, da, 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 da. So I got 4 phrases. Like, that's still not a poem, never mind. So I don't force it. But I got 4 interesting phrases that depict something of that vibe. And then I wander off again. And then more comes and more comes. If not, I don't force it and I say, yeah, that one is a bit half-baked. So I do not force myself through the, hey, how come only got 4? It's just not ready for more yet. And inevitably, there are times when I level up because I'm more transparent, or I can really delve deeper into the experience and go, wow, I think I'm ready to stare at it and wade through the crack a bit deeper. And then I get a few more phrases, or the rest of it comes flowing out to my shop, right? And I think that's what it is. I think writer's block for me is really about aligning myself to the creative process. A lot of times, I don't have an intellectual block, I have an emotional fear holding myself back. I don't really want to see it. I'm worried if I go there, what kind of ramifications will happen, right? What else will come out? What do I have to deal with? Which is why I asked you, what kind of risks did you face? For me, it's I risk embarrassing my parents. I risk embarrassing myself. I risk embarrassing the people who were present but did not help me or wished they could help me. Especially writing about childhood trauma, it's very risky. Self-deprecating stuff. Whoops, I'm not as polished as I appear to be, sorry. It's very transparent. So, once you let the genie out, it's there. You can't, sorry, don't look at that. No, and it's out.
Yeah.
So, I accept writing like this for me, it's a dialogue with my inner child. I believe the inspiration is really a dialogue with the inner child saying, I want to say this. Really, you want to say it like that? You're going to get me in trouble. Okay, let's go. And it comes out, right? And I think that's why it's so powerful, because you're giving your inner voice an authentic voice. You're not worried about what people are, how people are going to react. That's why the content warning. I feel like if you're writing for a particular audience, especially if you're a poet laureate, can't do that. I don't know how to do that because I'm having a hard enough time being authentic to myself. How do I calibrate for someone else? It gets so contrived, you know? So my process is very personal. I like it, so I put it out there. If you don't like it, path. I hope you can relate. I hope you can vibe, but very personal.
Yeah,
Make sense?
makes sense.
What do you draw inspiration from?
In in poetry in general. Well,
What gets you? Wow, I want to be like that or fire up. Just in general.
there's a lot of things like the basis, feelings, and sometimes, well, unlike a few of my poetry friends, I would say I have a more above average knowledge on pop culture as compared to literature. Although I do take literature currently for my A-level journey, and I think with what you say, catering to your audience, I don't think I can cater to my audience in a way that if I were to put in a William Shakespeare quote, a sonnet, or some traditional forms, I don't think I can do that as often in my writing. So, in that sense, I draw inspiration by the media I consume the most, which is superheroes or superheroes. I love them. The MCU, DC, Kamen Rider. Yes, all these things are more. I feel more comfortable writing about it, or I feel more comfortable incorporating inside my writing, which is cool. And also, I'm in Gen Z. We use TikTok, we use Instagram. I don't think a lot of people in my generation read books nowadays. I think I'm probably one of the few. But then in Singapore, we also people people do a lot of poetic forms,
Yeah.
which I don't know, cause the Asian parent in me is like saying I want to win, I want to compete. So it's like can say the first strikes, some although
Challenge.
I am told that I am quite toned down, and yeah, it's just I just want to challenge myself into writing these forms. One of the forms I try and again is the gazelle. It's very hard to do.
I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, it's not. I would say it's very hard to maintain the energy, which I'm still trying to learn. One thing I'm surprised at is how I can do 3D cinema. It's almost frightening, and it's gone to the point where I work enough twin cinema where I'm like starting to get tired of it instead of like it's such a good form. Now I'm just tired of it. I'm like, why am I so addicted to twin cinema? It's like and moreover it's a Singaporean form, which you wouldn't believe because it's quite I would say it's a genius form that I would have thought would come about from probably America or England, but no, it's in Singapore and it's been by one of our local poets. I think it was Yeo Kai Chai, if I'm not wrong.
I think you are right.
Yeah, and it's cool to see how the form works. And I'm not sure if it's my favorite form, but I really like it a lot. So yeah.
What if you took the forms in addition to challenging yourself as a buffet experience to see, hey, I really like this method of expressing myself.
Yeah.
Because I suspect the twin cinema is facilitating expression that's innately you right now. It's effective. And I've discovered that as I go into experimental art, some combinations work better than others, and I've learned very quickly I cannot force something I'm not excited about. It just doesn't work. So as much as I want to suck up and say I want to use your reference, if I'm not excited about it, inspired by it, there's no way I can do something good with it. It becomes very contrived. However, if I'm intrigued by it, somehow something would break and soften in my head and I shift into it enough because I keep working on it that I will embody it and emulate it somehow. And that is a very strange thing because there are times where, especially when I'm combining movement, music, and spoken word, I'm not trying to mesh it, but intuitively it works
Mm.
because it's coming from the same person and the same
Yeah.
being creating in three different permutations. And I think that's what the challenge is supposed to do. Come out of the mug realizing I really like film cinema, but I also picked up a few other things that, wow, actually this works.
Yeah.
Right?
That is true.
So hopefully you're not so frustrated with the gazelle thing, even if you don't get it after this.
I'm not really that frustrated. It's a
Cool
fun
lah.
experience, even
Cool
though
lah.
I am quite competitive sometimes. Sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that it's more of exposure. Hey, try this on. Does this look good
Yeah,
on you, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But it is quite paradoxical. Twin cinema as a mechanism has a lot of potential for irony and yin and yang, right?
Yeah.
Left side, right side together. Wow. It can be quite fierce.
It is, and based on how I think there was this post where someone was asking about how to write twin cinema, and everyone had, including some single poets, they included their own opinions on how to write twin cinema. And I felt like I was the only one who had a different perspective because I was the only one who said I write both sides at the same time. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
I think I am quite the crazy one over here because I really have a different style. Because I don't really have a mentor to guide me in poetry, other than Simple Women with its quits, but other than that, it's just me. So I've grown to the point where whenever I write twin cinemas, I just write both sides at the same time, and I think to myself, are these two like conveying different perspectives, but when they come together, do they come and make a new one? And it works. It just somehow works. And one of the twin cinemas, which is I feel is my magnus opus for now, Losing You, conveyed the loss of people, and currently I'm using it as a spoken word piece for a dance film I'm doing. Hopefully I won't cancel it, but it's very interesting how incorporated twin cinema in that dance piece and I don't know, it's like over the course of 4 years, I think Losing You was that poem where I literally can't hate it.
When you read it on BTL, it was heart wrenching, man. It was the first time I think Hamlin and I heard you really take a piece and perform it. You didn't just read the bloody thing, it was chilling. That was the first time I said, wow, you leveled up.
Yeah.
Because I was shaking a bit after hearing it. It's like, so that was very effective. But hearing you talking about how you write twin cinema helps me circle back to your question earlier. How do I write? It's more important for me to stay in a zone where I'm not tempted to edit and analyze what's on the page. The create zone for me is more about staying authentic, staying playful. Am I still putting fun phrases, movements, colors on the page? Or have I gone into shaping, editing, noticing how clumsy? And I used to be a lot more pedantic about it because I didn't like being in the zone. It felt very vulnerable. But I realize I'm creating more effectively now because I am willing to stay in the zone where I could be bawling my eyes out, raging, short-tempered. But I accept that's the fertile ground for creation, right? That's where my inner child is happiest. I try to isolate myself from people when I do that because it can be quite fierce. But that's been a very recent shift when I was able to silence more of my insecurities and say, no, I value this more. Then the intuitive process became much more free-flowing. So I suspect there's something there that's much more intuitive and free flowing in your process. So I'm guessing it's very important for you to stay in that vibe in the zone as well.
Yeah. Sadly, that vibe only comes like when I'm probably like falling asleep or like on the train. I'm just trying to read a book.
Then now you delay going to sleep.
Yeah, it was the worst feeling, and I had school the next day. I was like,
yeah. I know what you mean.
yeah.
And then the worst part is you let yourself go to sleep, you wake up. What was that?
Yeah,
It was
oh
so
my
good.
god.
So good.
So good.
What was it?
Yeah, I had it multiple times, and I'm like, I should have got it done at least.
Yeah, I think what I've done is I keep my mobile phone close by, and at very least I hit record. And I do a gist because that might jog my memory and pull it back. Maybe not in the same clarity at first, but at least I do remember what I was venting about. So keep that close by.
Alright.
But the other thing, I don't know if you realize this, but that willingness to create out of the zone, that's very experimental art friendly,
Yeah.
Because you're not doing the post-it method, you're not doing the editorial method, which is very linear and sequential. You are responding to your vibe.
Yeah.
And so it's not that big a jump to then incorporate music, visual, movement that you feel is relevant, compatible. It just echoes another aspect of what you're trying to communicate. That's fringe one. So watch that space. I wanted to interview because I suspected that you could cross over and incorporate quite quickly. And given your journey, you might find there is an efficiency and impact that can be communicated more succinctly with a picture, a video, a dance movement that is so elegant, no need to say. Especially if you paise to say. I don't say, I just show you. You already know what I'm referencing. Now you do the cheeky underneath,
Yeah.
I didn't say why, I just reference. That's fringe. Oh, everyone knows what you're talking about. And that sort of mechanism, I think, again, because we are where we're at, it gives you a freedom that would otherwise be tense lah. I also sometimes feel very shy about approaching certain topics because, especially the gender equality things, who the hell am I to talk about it? I'm male, right? But I do have some strong opinions about it because of my experiences. So I'm like, and I don't want to appear like I'm mansplaining or downplaying it. So again, it's a way of referencing it without grabbing on and committing. So that's my question mark. After Singapore Remo, after your exams, after all that, when you can create that space, is that interesting to you? And that is a good segue. So, bye for now.
Adieu.